My name's Chris Adams. I am with Miles Partnership, and we're delighted to bring you this workshop on destination management, a set of practical tools, tips, and takeaways that hopefully are the start of a toolkit. Every problem is different. Every destination has its own custom demands and issues. So you need a toolkit that hopefully you can pull out specific resources, takeaways, case study examples that would be relevant for your individual situation. So let's jump into it. And Queenstown is going to be one of the destinations we're talking about today. Everybody would have seen Boulder. Who's been to Boulder? Okay. Who's been to Queenstown? Got more work to do, Graham? Copenhagen. We've got Signe with us. Who's been to Copenhagen? Okay, more work to do there. And then we're delighted to be joined by Mark Ellwood, who you would have heard on Global All-Stars stage along with Signe yesterday. And Mark's going to be talking about 5 real visionary entrepreneurs and change agents and what they're doing to move the conversation forward around some of the challenges about community engagement, growth, congestion, etc. Okay, so we've just run through each of these panelists. They're each going to speak for 7 minutes or less, give you some very targeted examples of what they're doing, resources for your toolkit. All the slides are already up and available right here, so you don't need to be furiously taking notes. So you can go there right now and download this slide deck. I'll just give you a moment to take that down. Okay, and the agenda today, we're going to kick it off. It's amazing, my daughters are so quick on taking a photograph, I haven't even noticed they've done it. And meanwhile, I still, have to find the appropriate app on the phone, open it up. Okay, so we're going to jump first into a quick live poll, and I'm going to ask you a question which you're going to answer. So you're going to need your mobile phone to participate in the survey in a moment here. So pull that out. It's very quick and easy. Actually, it's a great online polling platform. Then we're going to go into the panelists. They're each going to speak for 7 minutes. Then we'll have the interactive discussion. And this is important that you, just in the remaining 10 minutes, contribute your questions, your issues, your challenges, what you're working on, or observations about what's worked and what hasn't. And then we'll just summarize a few key takeaways for you. Okay, so let's jump into the live poll. So we're going to ask you, what sort of destination marketing organization are you? Are you a destination marketer or manager or both? And so what we've done is asking you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these areas, marketing and management. So you could arguably be both. So if you're putting an enormous amount of resources into both, that's staff, that's time, that's budget, both in terms of managing issues, then you could be 8, 9, 10 for both. If you've got much more limited focus in one or the other, you could be in the 0 to 3 range, and obviously if you've got some commitment to one or the other, you could rate yourself 4 to 7. Okay, so let's go live. The wonders of live technology. Okay, so what you need to do is you go to menti.com. It's very quick and simple. Just go open a browser on your smartphone, go to menti.com, menti.com. You put in that code and you'll get the question back, and then we'll start seeing live results. Let's see who's the quickest. There you go. That's the first response you see. Now we've got more coming in. So the 1 is sort of an average, a moving average of all the responses. So obviously marketing on the left, so management on the right. So obviously DMOs feel they're putting more commitment into marketing generally, and somewhat less into management, but management's creeping to the right. Okay, I'll just give you another quick little section to, and we'll share these results out. So I'll actually add it to that slide deck so you'll see. From our randomized scientific study of DMOs, we can see where people are broadly. And it'll be actually interesting to, if we did this every year, for example, to see what happened. And there's some outliers down the bottom, isn't there? Somebody's not doing a lot of either. I wonder what they're doing. Okay, so we can come back to this during the Q&A if we need to. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to switch back to the slides and we're going to jump into the first of the panelists. And that is the remarkable, the wonderful, the special Signe, who you would have heard yesterday, and she's going to build on that presentation by focusing on what they're doing with what's called 10x Copenhagen. So without further ado, Signe.
Thank you so much. I'll borrow the clicker. Hi, everyone. So now I only have 5 minutes. So luckily yesterday I had a little bit longer. So yesterday what I was sort of giving an introduction to was the local strategy that we launched in early 2017 and some of the challenges, some of the lessons learned since then, especially with this new era of over-tourism upon us. And as part of that, we launched the 10x Copenhagen project, which I also mentioned yesterday. And now 10x Copenhagen, it's interesting because we thought it was a very cool title when we first came up with it. But the reaction among our stakeholders was, what? Does this mean you want 10 times more tourists to Copenhagen? But in fact, 10x is the Google Innovation Project, so what we were really trying to say is, no, it's all about rethinking tourism. It's about taking it all apart and asking all the difficult questions and looking at it in a completely new way. So that's basically what we spent a year doing. We did research on all these different aspects: competitors, the city itself, the locals, of course, and the visitors. Now, this is not unusual as a destination. I'm sure a lot of you do research all the time. What was unusual in this project was that we had the opportunity to do all of it within the same year, and it was quite a big budget to do this, which is also unusual for the research department. If any of you are researchers, you know you always feel you have too little funds. So it was a big budget, it was a big project, but what was also interesting is that we actually didn't make the full plan when we started. So we said, okay, we need a little bit of insight on this, and we'll start there. And then once we'd done that, we invited stakeholders and city stewards, local communities in for what we called machine room meetings. And so the good thing about machine room meetings were that they were very exclusive and very closed. So everyone felt very special to be invited, which is always a good way to do. But it also meant that we could then introduce all the results that we had to that date, and then get questions and worries and answers, and then continue designing the research project from there. So we were doing that throughout the whole year. And that ended up in tons and tons of data that we could analyze, and that took us also a little bit of time. And of course, now that I only have 7, maximum 7, preferably less, I won't be able to go through all that data with you, but it's just an example because now we're talking about tools for destination management, and in Europe especially, I think that concerns over-tourism quite a lot. And I think one of the sort of tools that we've used in Copenhagen was, first of all, opening up the conversation, inviting in a much broader and very open conversation on tourism in Copenhagen, but also providing new data to really inform that conversation. And as to one of the points that I also made yesterday, that it's very easy to oversimplify the question of over-tourism. And it's almost so intuitive a word that it comes with the word that we think, oh, over-tourism, it's too much of one thing in the whole of the city, but as I said yesterday, it's a hyper-local issue, and there is no simple solution. It's not simply under-tourism that will solve the issue of over-tourism. So just to give you an idea, and again, this is just scratching the surface of a very big project, but to give you an idea, one of the solutions that is very discussed in, and I'm talking from a European perspective, I would assume it's also discussed here in the US, but that's the sort of promised lands of dispersal. So that's always the question, what do we do with over-tourism if we could just get them to spread out more? Then that would solve everything for us. And then one of the criticisms that come out in Europe is that that doesn't solve anything because the tourists actually don't want it. Of course, they all want to go see the top attractions, and therefore dispersal will not work. So what's interesting about this data is that we can actually dive into that a little bit. We can see that 77% of the locals actually want the tourists to spread out more. So this is a good thing. So we have locals with us on this dispersal agenda. But those of you that remember the details of the presentation yesterday will also remember that actually only 38% of the locals want the tourists to disperse into their neighborhood. So there's a little bit of a mismatch between that. But an interesting result of the research shows us that dispersal is actually in the interest of the visitors as well. So we can actually show through our data, and this is statistically significant, that the more neighborhoods you visit as a visitor, the more happy you are with your overall stay. Now this is completely new in a sense, because the criticism is often that you'll really actually just want to go to the most popular places, but by increasing your mobility, you actually become a more happy visitor. So this is important. The other thing is we can see that it's actually not working very well, this whole dispersal strategy for us. So this is a map of Copenhagen. Those of you, the few ones in the back that have been there will recognize this. But you can see in the inner city, we have 87% of the visitors that go to that very sort of small, very concentrated part of the city. And it decreases quite a lot as you go out to the neighborhoods. Now, this is no surprise really, because the inner city, I mean, the picture we just had before of Nyhavn, the very famous sort of postcard perfect Copenhagen, that's where it is. And that's where everyone needs to go. But what was interesting was that then you have the locals and they want them to disperse, and they actually see, why don't they seek off the beaten track? They should do as the locals, they should follow in our footpaths. And the data actually shows us that's exactly what they're doing. Because the locals are also concentrated in their free time, not when they're going to work, but when they're spending their free time, they're also going to the inner city. It's very small numbers, but it says 72% of the locals surveyed actually seek towards that very same, very small neighborhood. And it's a historical neighborhood, so it's small streets with cobbled streets is the word, right? Yeah. So this is just to say, and we can discuss this forever and ever, and I would love to, but this is just to say that through this data, we're actually getting a much more informed basis to discuss what is the issue right now in terms of over-tourism, in terms of integrating tourism within the city. And another thing, of course, is the industry, where we have in Copenhagen quite a huge concentration of all the accommodation, again, within the inner city. This is perhaps not very clear on this map, but what's even more interesting is that we have an immense increase in capacity coming over the next couple of years. So by 2022, we'll have a 46% increase of room capacity, and 45% of that new capacity is within the city center. So again, now we have data to show dispersal is good. It's actually in the interest of the visitors. The locals want it, they just don't really get it, and they're themselves part of, the concentration. And then finally, we do actually also have a huge room capacity that's coming within the city center, but we also need the industry and we need the policy makers of the city to understand that this is not okay. This is not something that will necessarily balance out itself. So you need to regulate as well the coming rooms and the coming initiatives that they're doing. So that was sort of the very, very quick intro to a very large research project. But the good thing is that this is actually not a conversation that I think we should have only in Copenhagen, because we will not be able to figure out all the solutions. So what we did was we published all the results, all the data, all the reports are available on 10xcopenhagen.com. And most of it is in English, actually, and all of the curated sort of presented results are in English, so you'll be able to access most of it. And this is on purpose. And just to, in this room, this may be a little bit of a surprise, but that was a discussion in Copenhagen. Do we really want to publish this? And do we want to publish it so that they can read it outside Denmark? And so this was a discussion we had also with the City Hall, and I think it's very important that we actually share our insights, because this is a big challenge, and the destinations will not be able to figure it out of themselves. And that's why I really encourage that we have a very open and sort of share what's difficult as well whenever we have the opportunity, as we do today. So thank you.
That's wonderful, and let's pass it over to Kim Farin, who's Chief Marketing Officer of Boulder, Colorado, and she's going to be talking about one specific but very powerful example of working on visitor congestion. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you. Yes, we rated rated ourselves as a 9 on the marketing and a 3 in management. It looked like a lot of other people did too. So we just were dipping our toes into destination management with a hiker shuttle that goes to the most popular trailhead in town. It's located right here, right at the foot of the Rockies. Boulder's located right here too, right at the foot of the Rockies, just 30 minutes from Denver. 50 years ago, the citizens of Boulder decided that they wanted to tax themselves and buy this piece of land. And they also decided that there's a lot of other land that we would like to buy, and in 50 years, they have purchased 45,000 acres of land. And that's a lot of land, and that's a big number to understand, so this is how I describe it. If you were to take all of the ski areas in Colorado, the Aspens, Vales, Breckenridges, and combine all of that land together, you would come up with 40,000 acres of land. The citizens of Boulder have purchased 45,000 acres of land that surround our city and give us instant access to hiking trails, places where we can be with nature and clear our heads, and it really does shape our lifestyle. This is the hiking trail, and so because of this land and all of the hiking trails, and because we are so close to Denver, this trail gets about 500,000 visitors a year. And there are not that many parking spots, especially in the summer. On the weekends, there are only 450 parking spots in that neighboring neighborhood and at the bottom of this trail. So you can imagine people come to the parking lot and they just circle around and around and around, and they're getting more and more annoyed by the minute. They're also going out into the neighborhoods, parking out there where the neighbors and the residents are not too happy about it. So nobody is happy. And in 2015, a transportation study was going to happen, and our CEO found out about that transportation study and decided that she wanted to be a part of it. So she got herself invited. But not only did she get invited, but she decided that she would pay for half of that study. So that the next year, when a traffic study came about to study just particularly this issue, tourism and Marianne were already at the table. We all knew that a shuttle was the answer. But the city had tried a shuttle once before, and it just didn't work, but it's because it wasn't incentivized. There was nothing that had changed any differently other than saying a little bit of message saying, hey, come ride the shuttle. So the city made significant investment and put in parking kiosks in that parking lot and around the neighborhoods. And we knew that people weren't going to be too happy when they first got to that trailhead forever and ever and ever. They've been able to park there for free. The residents have been able to park there for free. And what the heck? So a piece of the project, of the puzzle, was that we had people stationed in the parking lot saying, hey, yes, you now have to pay. And it's just a little bit. It's just $2.50 an hour. But if you're not happy about that, you can drive back down 5 minutes down the hill, park for free, and then ride the shuttle bus up. Another thing that we have in the parking lot is our mobile visitor center. So that is the CVB's mobile visitor center, a 1972 VW bus. I think it's always an age-old question of, do you ask the visitors to come to your visitor center, or do you take the visitor center out to where everybody is? And so in Boulder, it's at the bottom of this trailhead. That's been a really popular thing for residents, visitors, us, the city. So that house there, it's called the Ranger Cottage. It's where the Rangers are. And they are really happy that this visitor center is here. They can do what they do, which is ask people or to answer questions of where should we go hiking. They can answer those questions, and we can answer the questions of, hey, are you looking for a place for lunch? Or let us give you other ways to extend your stay. We also have another one of these. It's purple. And she is located in another outlying parking lot, so where people are hanging out waiting for the shuttles to come. There's a photo booth in that one and in this one, and brochures and a friendly person. We knew that dogs were going to be a key piece to hiking in Colorado. Everybody wants to hike with their dogs. So the bus takes dogs. The bus takes big backpacks, strollers, picnic baskets, all your gear. We knew that was an important thing. The bus gladly takes it all. Another interesting component is that we have staff on shuttles. So on each ride, there is an ambassador that talks about environmentalism and things that Boulder is known for, and loving the earth and protecting the earth and being nice to that trail that you're about to hike on. A measurement of success for us was going to be, are the residents happy? Can we make them happy? And we succeeded, I believe. We got this really nice note back from a resident who lives near that trailhead. That was a big success for us. So there are 20% fewer cars up there, happier residents. The CVB is now looked, I think we've always been looked, but especially now looked by the city as a really trusted partner. And tourism, I think it helps with visitors understanding that tourism is a valuable part of the economy. We just finished up a resident sentiment survey, and 80% of our residents said, yes, tourism spending is beneficial to the city. I think I did it again. I'm going to push. Thank you. So my big takeaway is that when you hear that there are discussions happening in your town, don't just sit by and wait to hear about those discussions. Like Signe said yesterday, don't think of yourself as just the fun cousin and go sit at the fun cousin's table. Attend the meeting and offer your opinions and your perspectives. Offer cash if you can, and sit at the grown-ups table, because tourism has a place there. Thank you.
Okay, and next, all the way from Queenstown in New Zealand, not Australia.
Yeah,
Over to you, Graham.
Thanks very much, Chris, and great to be here. Hi, everybody. It is my first Destinations International Conference or convention, and I'm sure I'll be back. Such common issues across the globe. I'm a marketer by heart, so I had to tell you a little bit about Queenstown to give you some context, and there's some few pretty pictures which show our place, which perhaps you could use as screensavers, and it might inspire a few more of you to come and visit us soon. But yeah, we've learned the hard way that a lot of people actually do not know where we are. We're at the bottom of the world, the bottom of the South Pacific, 2,000 kilometres away from Australia. There is a Queensland, a state in Australia, which causes some confusion, but we are Queenstown in the bottom of the South Island of New Zealand. And we're an island nation of only 5 million people. So a small country, but perfectly formed, of course. This is how you get, not necessarily just on Air New Zealand, there are many services, but this is one of our Achilles heels as climate change comes upon us and carbon neutral targets and other things become a topic of conversation and focus around the world. We are an island nation and will be relying on air services forever to get to our place. And Mark talked yesterday about the investment in airports around the world. It's an incredible thing that's happening at the same time as climate change is putting pressure on air travel. So here's a few photos just to give you some context. We are an outdoor adventure destination. I came from our ski season. It's not great snow this year, so I'm not missing much. Although my pass this year was really just a donation to the ski company, I think. This is our place, a bit of golf. Lakes, rivers and mountains is the context and adventure activity, the world home of bungee jumping. So do come and visit. And a nice downtown. But the point of my discussion this morning will become clear shortly. We are having this issue. We've got resident growth and visitor growth, significant growth in both of these things. They feed off each other. Visitor services, new restaurants, experiences, retail, of course, attracts then more people to want to live in our place. So we've had the double whammy, if you like, of resident growth and visitor growth, which has created a tension without question. I hate the over-tourism word, and I sort of swore to myself I wouldn't use it. I think it's been captured by mainstream media in tourism. We understand it. Tourism media understands the complexity of it and examines it appropriately, but the mainstream media now have got hold of it and apply it, in my view, completely inappropriately to many things. But some people in our place think they've latched onto it and think we have over-tourism. These are some of the words that I've just applied, but from feedback from our community that has created this tension. Our visitors, I'm pleased to say, still, and we survey this, of course, rating their experience very highly. So they're not affected yet, but they certainly will be if this continues. I'm just showing you this very briefly. These are our guiding principles of how we work as an organisation. You can have a closer look at this later. I'm just going to touch on the top one, which is placemaking. We literally have this on the wall in our reception to remind ourselves, as well as anyone who visits us, what our purpose is and the principles in which we guide what we do and how we develop our strategies. So placemaking is about community, resident and business sentiment and engagement and making our place welcoming. I think in a destination like ours, this holds true. A welcoming host community is the most important asset a visitor destination or our visitor destination can have. Despite our fabulous natural assets, without this we won't be able to deliver a fantastic visitor experience. So there's a couple of things I just want to share with you. One, at a national level, what we're doing in New Zealand to connect our communities and our visitors in a way that encourages great visitor behaviour and caring for our place. This thing is called the Tiaki Promise. Tiaki is a Maori word from our indigenous Maori culture and language, and it really means, in short, caring for people and place. And so there's a whole bunch of things in here I'm not going to touch on, but at a national level, the issue of pressures of tourism growth on our communities was becoming very evident, and this was just launched in November last year. As a visitor-facing opportunity to express how we would like them to behave as they visit us. Locally, we've launched this before Tiaki, but actually we've just given it some new energy, Queenstown Cares, which is about our place and our environment and our stories. And what this was about also connecting our visitors to the things we are doing to protect and enhance and restore, in some cases, our environment that they're enjoying. So this, while both of these things were aimed, it appeared, at our visitors. In fact, for me, the most important recipient or customer, if you like, for these initiatives, both of them, local and national, was our local communities, because we needed to demonstrate to them that we were asking our visitors to behave in ways that they would expect them to behave. But in the first instance, we need to ensure that our community is in fact behaving, and we as residents are behaving in the way we're then expecting our visitors to. So that's why that community is the first and most important target audience for these initiatives. There's just one other thing I wanted to touch on, and that's about reputation. We actually, there's another little thing we did a few years ago. We were getting some, in fact, I have to tell you, it came up, there's not much happens in Queenstown that's newsworthy, I think. And the local media, and there are some local media, would interview the local police sergeant every Monday morning and say, what's been going on? And actually, just about every time he would say, oh, we had some more drunken Australians on the weekend that we had to arrest at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they were causing trouble. So that became the headline news just about every week. Oh, more drunken Australians. I'm not picking on Australians, but just a wee bit. They are our biggest. It's not a surprise because they are our biggest international market. So, you know, the numbers stack up. So we looked at this and think, you know, of course, as we all know, media gets syndicated these days, get picked up. So suddenly in Auckland, that's happened. You know, people are reading about Queenstown has drunken Australian problems. So we formed a reputation management group, which was the communications managers from our RTO, Regional Tourism Organisation, or DMO, the council, the local authority, communication manager, the airport, the police, community liaison officer, and Chamber of Commerce. And they now meet very regularly just to connect and ensure our messaging about our place is appropriately managed, and we're all saying the same thing. It wasn't to deny stuff that's going on, it was actually just to ensure our messaging was aligned. So I think I've taken up my time. Instead of over tourism or under tourism or whatever, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a balance between our community and our visitors, our businesses, and all of the other stakeholders that we have in our place. Now, getting an equilibrium or balance is pretty tough, right? But that's what we're aiming for. So that's me, I think. I'm happy to answer any questions later, of course. Thank you very much.
Okay, and finally, Mark, who's going to share 5 entrepreneurs, visionaries, and changers.
Perfect. Okay, hello everybody. I will be energetic and hopefully, can you hear me? Keep you awake. I'm just going to talk about 5 people who are doing interesting, different things to address some of the challenges that everyone's talked about. We've talked about tourism pressure. How do you deal with that? 5 people who think of it different ways. First one is Daniele Kielgren. He lives in Milan, he's an entrepreneur. He was motorbiking through a poor part of Italy, Abruzzo, just down by the heel. And he went through this amazing village, and he said, this is as precious to Italy as the Sistine Chapel. But it was empty. People didn't live there were no jobs. And he said, how do we save this? So he toddled back to Milan, and he got $5 million of investment, went down, and he bought many of the empty houses, which he refitted like that. So they look rustic and beautiful, but they have great plumbing, they have Wi-Fi. And he launched the world's first albergo diffuso, diffuse hotel. A bit like a home share operated centrally. It was an instant success. He got people to come to a place they'd not been visiting. He moved them into a poorer part of Italy, and they had an amazing time. He launched another albergo diffuso in Matera nearby. And next, he goes to Africa, where he's taking over a whole load of huts by Lake Kivu. I don't know if anyone's been to Rwanda, but in Rwanda, right by Lake Kivu, he's going to create another one. Rwanda brings me to Deb Kalmeyer, who runs Raw Africa. She's a great friend of mine. I admire what she's doing. She runs a very high-end safari outfit. And she has 2 missions. One, she's helping with Rwanda. She's pushing growth in Rwanda. She herself is from Zimbabwe, but Rwanda's a fascinating destination. Tourism obviously went away because of the genocide. It was synonymous with trouble. It is being built from the ground up as a luxury destination. All of the new hotels going in there are only luxury, and all of the hotels are required to participate in environmental programs. So in other words, the gorillas that you want to go and see in Virunga, if you stay there, part of your overnight, the fee for your overnight will directly support that community. And Deb has been championing that a lot. Another thing she's been doing to drive people to less traditional destinations in Kenya, in South Africa, is women-focused trips. She now runs women's empowerment trips where everyone on the trip, everyone providing service to you, is female. The hotel owner, which means that you'll be going to hotels that perhaps you've not heard of before, the pilot, the guide, the tracker, even the chef. Next person, Paul Nicklin. If you were in my little chat yesterday, I talked to you about Trolltunga, which is the poster child for social media, doing it for the gram and ruining it for the gram. 500 people go there in 2009, 40,000 go there in 2014. So how do you flip it around? We know social media is super powerful for travel and for destinations. Paul has an answer. He's a photographer, but he's also a campaigner. He has about 5 million followers on Instagram, and he uses that to spotlight climate change, to spotlight the damage that's being done. He goes to the Arctic, to the Antarctic. He runs a non-profit called Sea Legacy, which is about coral reefs and sustainable fishing. He's saying, I want to use social media and travel to motivate you to action, not just motivate you to visit. And that's a very clever tweak. My fourth changemaker, Herta Udo, I loved listening to Signe talk about dispersal because Herta ran a very clever program for Amsterdam. She was the marketing head for iAmsterdam. And she looked at how do we manage dispersal in Amsterdam? How do we stop that over-tourism in the center? We're not going to punish people. We're not going to shame them. We're going to nudge them. And one of the things they did, they found there was a little spit of land near Amsterdam that was very appealing, little beach, but no one was going. So what did they do? They renamed it Amsterdam Beach. And they nudged visitors to think of that as part of their visit. They also used data from the RFID chips in the iAmsterdam card to see what people's habits were when they visited Amsterdam. And surprisingly, everyone did the same thing in the same order. Go to the Van Gogh Museum in the morning, canal boat ride in the afternoon. So instead, when you bought that card, you got suggested itineraries. That scrambled that a little to encourage people to have the same experience, but maybe in a different order. And it worked so well that she got a promotion. She now runs iAmsterdam. She's not the CMO, but the CEO. And the last change makers, so it's a pair, I did cheat, I've got 6 people. When you were walking to the convention center today, you probably tripped over a scooter, right? Did you? Because you can blame them. These 2 guys wanted to bring the bike share idea that's so popular in London and New York to cities that didn't have the density to support that. And they eventually settled on scooters. They got 15 miles per hour. What they're great for is getting tourists, visitors, who wouldn't consider taking public transport off the roads. It's a nice experience, it's a fun experience. Locals use them too, but it's a way of nudging people to maybe ease the congestion. And it worked so well that they are now, I think it was 2 years ago they started this, they're in 65 cities, Zurich, Brisbane, Dallas, DC. They got $335 million of investment. And my favorite thing is in 12 cities around the country, if you type into Google Maps, you want your directions. You'll get walking directions in time, driving directions in time, and scooter directions and time. So they're really embedding, Google is really embracing them. So I hope those 5 people give you a sense of different ways of using social media, using transport, different ways of using accommodation, how you can address dispersal, getting people to get a better experience in a destination without realizing anything's changed. Thank you.
Very good. Let's get a roving mic for questions. Who wants to wander around? Just while we're doing that, I'll just summarize in terms of a few key takeaways and resources. So Graham talked about Tiaki and visitor education. I've been involved as a volunteer along with a gentleman, Jonathan Day, who used to run the Sustainability Council board for Destinations International with the Travel Care Code. This is a free, open publishing platform, so you can download and use any. It's 10 principles on traveling responsibly. You can download it, customize it to your destination, or use it as the basis of building your own set of visitor education principles on how to travel with care and responsibility. Okay, questions? Who has got an observation, a question, an issue they want to discuss?
Thank you. Great panel. I'm from Boise, Idaho, noted recently as one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. And we have this wonderful regional soccer event that came this past June. We'll be returning next year. And during the event, so this might be more towards Graham, but anyone that wants to help me with this. During the event, 12,000 people here for a week, huge economic impact, about $10 million for our community. One of our most noted newscasters does a great story, but in the story, he jokingly says, "We're full, by the way, don't come back, don't move here." And that's what went viral. That piece of the segment went, in social media, and then a lot of locals commenting. And that's not our welcoming nature. That's not what, we meet friends. That's our campaign. We are a very friendly community. So I love the idea of the Reputation Management Council. How do you get ahead of media and stories like this?
Yeah, good question. I was headlined in our media actually a couple of years ago when I said we would never use the F word, and that in itself became a headline for that very reason, because we had people in our community and actually people outside of our community in travel trade and others, if they couldn't get a room booking for their group or whatever, they started talking about Queenstown being full. And we are never full. So the approach we took was actually, particularly with our local media, we make ourselves really well known to our local media and invite them in for briefings on issues. Actually, there aren't that many based in Queenstown. If they are wanting comment from me, if I can make myself available, I do. So it doesn't happen overnight, but we've actually, by working closely with them, helped them to understand the importance of words that they use or don't use. Now, that's kind of a long game, to be perfectly honest, but it's come largely from us addressing it and me actually directly responding to that to media, and that's why I got a headline that actually, because it was a bit catchy, that actually went around the country as well. Don't use the F word. Maybe you could try that. We never use the F word. I'm not sure if there's anything else I can add. I don't know if anyone else wants to. Happy to answer. Talk some more later.
Any other questions? Yep.
Hi, I'm James from Jasper, Canada. We're a national park, but we're also a municipality. So I just wanted to ask, do you have any feedback for balancing community consultation with actually getting things done? So, not pushing too hard and being a good community partner, but trying to get things done in an efficient manner. I asked just because we reside actually in a federal jurisdiction, but are a municipality. So we have to balance a lot of, different perspectives, I'll put it. So any feedback would be great, thanks.
Anybody want to tackle that? Kim, Signe, Mark?
Cash.
Yeah, look, I don't have an answer for that, other than that's an ongoing challenge for us, certainly also. And this is going to sound probably not quite right, but the ask forgiveness, not permission, sometimes is required, in terms of you've just got to get on sometimes and take a lead and do some stuff. and then bring the community along. I think consulting on everything that you're doing, whoever your community stakeholders might be, is challenging and can mean you're not actually taking a lead on some stuff. So, that's the approach. I'm assessing each sort of scenario that we need in community engagement with, and perhaps take a different approach with each. But again, not really answering your question very specifically, but all I can say is I share that challenge. No one answer, but we don't always consult and wait till we've got a consensus before we proceed with things.
Okay, let's have a final question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Barbara from the London Convention Bureau. I've just got some feedback that what we did with the media. When we had the Olympics, and we've kind of rolled that out now for a lot of our smaller events, we created the non-accredited media centre, because quite often with big sporting events or big rotational events, you'll have your accredited media, but you'll have an awful lot of non-accredited media, and now influencers, social media influencers, etc. So what we did was to make sure that they had the best possible time they could have. We put them right bang in the middle of London, whereas the accredited media are often out at the stadiums or wherever the sporting event is, and that worked really, really well for us because we were able to give them free content, we were able to engage with them, and we got good news stories out. And that is something that we really did learn, and we kind of mirror that now with some of our smaller events.
Thank you so much. So let's wrap it up there. I'm sure the panelists are going to be available if you want to pop up and ask them any questions. Thank you to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. And thank you to you all for coming along. There's some key takeaways if you download the slide deck and a set of resources. So have a great rest of your conference, and we look forward to connecting with you.